session, Navigating the Contemporary Workplace Experiences and Strategies to Grow Your People, you will hear from practice leaders in this panel discussion of observations and techniques used to learn and manage people in today's complex and rapidly changing workplace, as well as some foundation strategies from the field of organisational psychology in enhancing leadership, engagement, psychological safety, communication and accountability outcomes in the contemporary work environment. So let's hear about our facilitator for today is Lauren Wright. Beg your pardon, Lauren. Lauren is a registered psychologist and experienced executive coach, a conflict mediator and leadership trainer at Stillwell Management Consultants. She has held a number of keynote speaking roles, including human resources, workplace psychology, performance, well-being, resilience, and general mental health. Lauren has more than 18 years' experience at Stillwell and holds a Bachelor of Psychology with first-class honours from Flinders University, and is also a member of the Australian Psychological Society. She is also accredited in human synergists. Oh, okay. Practitioner and use this tool to facilitate cultural change assignment for large organisations and complex senior management teams. Let's welcome Lauren Wright. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie, and welcome everyone. It's my pleasure to say a few opening comments before we dive into our panel discussion today with our outstanding panel of experts. It's a fascinating topic, isn't it? Working with people and performance issues. And I think, you know, when we look at the modern workplace, that's a question in itself, isn't it? What is it about our modern workplace that is so complex, so confusing? What does it actually look like? I don't know about you, but I feel like there are so many conflicting stories about what it does look like at the moment. We hear the benefits of a 4-day work week. We hear that people are going to achieve 100% productivity with 20% less work. We hear about, in the future, everyone will work from home. But at the same time, there's a great push from chief executives, particularly of large organisations, to get people back into the office. We hear about the Great Resignation, bare minimum Mondays. Anyone heard that one? We hear about quiet quitting. We hear about quiet hiring. Who knows how to make sense of it? So that's what we're here to do today. The list goes on. And in fact, we also hear that new generations of workers coming through may well have around 20 different roles across 5 different career streams in their career. It's quite different from a more traditional model of one organisation, one role, one career. So in planning today's session, what we did was to seek some advice from the association in relation to the kinds of queries that they commonly receive from you as their members. And what we found was that these queries really spanned the full employee life cycle, questions around attraction, recruitment, through to the separation phase as well. So we've designed a session today that provides as many practical strategies as possible around all aspects, full gamut of the employee life cycle. And while I think, you know, the question of the modern workplace is a complex one, what we're really definitely seeing at the moment is a shortage of talent. I don't know if that resonates with you in the audience, but we do know that across a range of industries and sectors, it's really, really hard to find people. Where are the people coming from, and what do they want from us in considering us as potential employers? So what we do is to provide advice to employers around having a really clear employee value proposition. So having a really clear sense of what you can offer. What is it that is going to attract and then retain employees to want to come and work for your organisation? And so in that respect, it really pays to know at this point in time in 2023, what do employees want? So what we know from the results of some really credible Australian surveys completed in 2023 is that one thing that employees are really attracted to in a prospective workplace is a workplace that seems to value their sense of well-being. So their sense that we value you as a person. We recognise that you have other roles and responsibilities in life that are going to require some flexibility and creativity around when you want to get your work done. We also know that, probably amplified by the cost of living crisis, remuneration is still a key concern for employees. But importantly, it's not the only thing that attracts people to want to come and secure a new role. We also know that it doesn't necessarily have to be that traditional, base salary that people are looking for. It can again be a little bit lateral around paying for car parking, subsidising study, supporting professional development pursuits, and so on and so forth. And of course, culture. Looking for a place that is aligned with me, your values align with my values. The way I want to do business is the way that you do business. We're on the same page. I feel supported by my leader and a sense of team feel, working with nice, caring, like-minded colleagues. And so I think it's also powerful to think about the fact that a cumulative effect takes place, or a combined effect, where if you're sort of thinking, we're not necessarily in a position to be best in market in terms of remuneration, for example, there is a certain effect that takes place where if the remuneration on offer is solid, competitive, good enough, other factors that are outstanding, such as the idea of culture, flexibility, other benefits that are non-financial, that is an extremely compelling offer for a prospective employee. But what I want to talk about as well, we've talked about a couple of key points to set up our discussion of things like attraction and recruitment strategies. But when we talk about culture and well-being and the retention side of things, I want to talk about something called the psychosocial climate and why it's really important that we get our heads around this as soon as possible. It provides a really good framework for kind of navigating a lot of these complex factors. And there's a couple of key reasons why it is important to know about it. The first one is actually regulatory. There are some changing laws. So there's some model laws at the moment and a model code of practice around the psychosocial risk factors in an organisation. Essentially, in the near future, federally speaking, we as employers are going to need to, we're going to have a duty of care to our employees to protect them from the harm of psychosocial risks. So that's one piece. But at the same time, we have an exciting opportunity, I think, to learn the key things that are important to employees and the things that make a difference to them when they're at work. So the psychosocial climate, these factors on the screen here, these are the things that impact a person's experience of work. It's a combination of psychological factors and social environmental factors that make the difference between a happy, thriving workplace culture and, quite frankly, a dysfunctional one. And the key thing to note, a couple of examples that I can think of, if you reflect on your own sort of experiences in having people work remotely, work in other locations, perhaps around Australia, or even working from home, it brings up a range of challenges, doesn't it, in terms of staying connected with them and their needs as a person. And so what we then have to do is to sort of work hard to make sure that we consciously create other mechanisms to maintain our understanding of how they're going with their work. What's their workload? What are their job demands? What's their productivity? How are they thinking and feeling? So in other words, sometimes you can't control a particular factor of the psychosocial climate, but then you can kind of leverage the other factors to make sure that if you've got some risks or some gaps, that you can compensate or add in extra supports so that people sort of are still operating with a sense that they're being positively challenged, and although they're encountering some niggles, some challenges, they feel supported by their leaders who are attentive and connected, which is what we know people do want. So what I would be recommending, I suppose, today as we get into our panel discussion in a moment is that we can really think about the interplay between being proactive with the strategies that we use, the best practice techniques, the mechanisms, how we set up our recruitment processes or our onboarding, our succession planning. We can plan, we can be proactive. And then when things inevitably go a little bit wobbly or we encounter some challenges, if we act early and address those things early in the piece before they intensify, we've got a great opportunity to create a thriving workplace that facilitates organisational growth. And that's what we're talking about today. So what I'm really looking forward to now is the opportunity to hear from our expert panellists who are living and breathing some of these challenges and complexities of the workplace, and to hear the kinds of strategies that they're implementing at the moment in their practices. So we've got some great panellists who have joined us today, and I'd like to introduce them without further ado. We have Glenn Hare, who's the co-founder of Fox and Hare. So Glenn lives between Tasmania and Sydney, and having spent a portion of his career with Macquarie, Glenn co-founded the highly successful Fox and Hare, which is very much in growth mode today. Please give Glenn a round of applause. We have Tracy Edwards, who's very much a trailblazer of the industry. She's grown her practice from being a solo operation, self-founded, self-employed, to a thriving team of professionals, most of whom are female. Welcome, Tracy. We have Corey Wassell, who's the Chief Executive of award-winning firm Versewealth, which has a great reputation for client experience and also for culture. So welcome, Corey. And finally, we have Michael Smith, who is the Managing Partner of Halpin Wealth. And you might recognise Michael as Chair of the State FAAA Committee and a member of a significant other number of industry-related advisory boards. So welcome, Michael. And for our audience, I'd love to invite you to submit your questions through to the app today, and we'll be integrating as many as we can as we go through our discussion, just by way of themes and making sure we're picking up on things that are important to you. But Glenn, if I could start with you, I know that you've put a lot of emphasis on developing a really strong values-aligned culture at Fox and Hare. So we'd love you to tell us about that and sort of the flow-on effect that it's had for your attraction and recruitment process.
Yeah, for sure. So in terms of culture, our culture is very much underpinned by our purpose. So our purpose is we exist to create a more equal world, and really we're delivering on that purpose through our mission. Our mission being to empower Australians to cultivate and define financial freedom, flexibility and choice. And we're doing this guided by our principles to really pave the way to a more equal and sustainable future. When really talking to our principles, which were developed with the team, so it was very much a collaborative effort, the principles range from really looking at empowering through service, so empowering and supporting our member base to ensure that they're making the smartest financial decisions possible to live the life that they aspire to. And that really talks to the demographic that we work with. So most of our members are aged between 25 and 45. If a retiree or pre-retiree reaches out to us, we would refer them on to another advisor that's much more experienced and skilled in that space. People before profit. So we have committed to increasing our team's salary at a minimum in line with inflation. And this isn't the arbitrary 2-3%. We increased everyone at a minimum of 7.1% leading into the end of financial year. We're already very focused on the flexibility piece. So our team is based all across Australia. So for myself, I'm in Tassie for a fair bit of the time, Sydney. We've got a team in Geelong, Canberra, Wollongong, Sydney. And we have one office day a month. So regardless of where you're located in Australia, everyone meets on that one day per month. And that day isn't a terribly productive day. It's a day of water cooler conversations, but it's a day for us to connect on a face-to-face level. We have recently implemented an overseas policy through the demand of a couple of our team, and what that looks like. So someone can live overseas for a period of up to 12 months, and they're required to come back for face-to-face interactions on a quarterly basis. So our people, people before profit is something that we're very, very focused on and very proud of. And we do a lot of work in the training and development space to make sure that, we're bringing in high performance coaches, we're bringing in speaking coaches to make sure that they're developing from a personal and professional level. We also talk a lot to, embracing the wild unknown. We're not afraid to shy away from change. We embrace it. We host regular focus groups with our members, getting them to challenge how we're doing things, and we don't just ask those members to the focus groups that we know are going to give us the answers that we want. We ask those that are going to give really honest, raw feedback to take back into our businesses. Walk lightly is the fourth of our 5 principles, which talks to, we only have one earth. It is priceless. This is a conversation among a number of things, whether it be around investing, whether it be around the conversations that we have with our member base across how they manage their income. Are they spending money on things that they don't need that's just going to land in landfill? And the 5th is power to the people. So we're very focused on the challenges that we have within society around inequality. And we're very conscious of the fact that although we work with a younger demographic, we're also working with a young, educated, well-paid demographic. So we're looking at how do we support those that potentially don't come from a privileged background. Working with an orphanage in the Philippines, which myself and Courtney, our head of advice, had the privilege of visiting earlier this year, that supports 147 children. We're also very focused about that inequality piece within our business. So the superannuation system has been unequal and strongly favours men over women. And one example of that would be the fact that often when women are the primary caregivers for children, they take time off. They're not, their employers are not contributing to their super funds. We've committed to continue to contribute to their super funds. It's really important that every single decision that we make, whether it be around the work that we do with our member base, the policy that we have as a company, and how we see ourselves in our broader community, these principles are our guiding lights.
It's really interesting to get a really clear voice around your principles and what you stand for. I can imagine that they'll come through at every point of interaction with your firm. Tracy, I'd love to get your thoughts on this issue too, because I know that you stand for the push to attract more females to work in the industry, and particularly to become advisors. What are some of the practical things that you think sort of could be done to assist that?
Well, from our point of view, we have a team that's mostly female, except for my husband, who does all the things I don't want to do. But when I was first coming into the industry and then started having children myself, I was very conscious of trying to find a company that was aligned with what I wanted. I needed flexibility, and back then no one was offering flexibility. I wanted to drop them at school, go in, all that sort of thing. So we offer our staff the ability to start at different times. We find work from home doesn't work for us. We're a small business. we need to be face-to-face and working together. But we have one full-time CSO, and other than that, the others are all cycling in and out, which can be a little challenging at times. We're also offering car parks for them. We're in the CBD, but on the edge. But for them and mothers trying to get to work as quickly as they can and work as much as they can, the car parking certainly helps. So as far as trying to encourage more women into the workforce, I'm also on the committee with Michael, but I'm very aware of, particularly in our own team, we've grown, one staff member from reception through to CSO, through to paraplanning, now advising. She's on maternity leave for the third time. I've got other staff members who aren't interested in doing the study, but they're very good technically, and they, we find out what they're interested in and skill them up. So when we're interviewing, a new CSO or someone that wants to join our practice, it's very much, this is what we do, this is the way we do it, this is the flexibility we can offer, and make sure that that aligns. So we've never made a mistake with an employee where we've had to say, see you later, because we're very upfront about what the values of our business are, how we like to treat our staff, how we like to treat our clients, and we make sure that aligns right up front.
So again, you've got that clarity around what you stand for.
Yep.
Excellent. And Corey, I know at Verse you've developed quite a detailed recruitment process, which is very much speaking my language, coming from a recruitment firm. So we'd love to hear about how you do it at Verse, how you hire for culture, for performance, to get the right fit.
Yep. Well, I wish we could say we haven't made any mistakes, like Tracy. But we have, and we will in the future as well. When you're hiring humans, it's not that easy and it's pretty nuanced. And I think every time we haven't got it right, we always reflect and think, like, where did we go wrong? And if we had our time again, what would we do differently? And it's kind of with that philosophy, we've built a really thorough hiring process. So, how detailed it is will vary based on roles, but if you're an advisor, it takes about 12 hours from start to finish. Now, it takes a long time, but we do it quite quickly. So it's thorough but fast. So, a lot of that 12 hours happens on one day in the office. We'll spend 8-9 hours with a candidate. As you mentioned, Lauren, like what we're looking for in its simplest terms is high performance and a culture fit. So high performance is someone's ability to do the job really well at a high level. And I think when you're hiring, there's a lot of science you can bring to hiring for high performance. But when you're hiring for culture, which is bringing someone into your business, in our case, a teammate into the team, someone that's going to love working there, that their teammates are going to love working with, and they're going to feel aligned to the values of the business and the purpose of the business and the way that we think and behave and interact and connect with each other. And that is more of an art than a science. Part of having a great culture, our belief is that everyone within the team has to be empowered to have a sense of ownership over the culture. And hiring, when it's done well, is a team sport, particularly when it comes to culture. So one of the steps in the hiring process is the cultural interview. It doesn't matter what role you're going for at Verse. You'll go through a cultural interview. I'm never involved. It's typically 3 teammates. It's typically a coffee. It'll go for 75 to 90 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer. It's really informal. We're trying to create the conditions where they can just be themselves with their guard down. They can be open, they can be vulnerable, they can be transparent, they can share everything. We'll do the same. And we're just trying to work out, like, are they one of us? Do they fit? And they can ask us anything they want. So we will let them know, when you go in, this is a two-way street. Ask everything. All the things you don't like about your current workplace, whatever your non-negotiables are, all the things that haven't worked for you in the past, ask those questions directly. Get the answers that you're looking for. And what happens at the end of the cultural interview, once the candidate leaves, basically the 3 teammates will ask some really simple questions of each other. Are they going to live our values? Are they going to make this a better workplace? Am I going to love working with them? And if the answer is no for any reason to any question like that, we just don't hire them. And we've had scenarios before where I've loved a candidate, and then teammates come out of the cultural interview, and it might be an associate advisor saying, I just don't think their energy's right, or they mention these few things that were inconsistent, and I just not sure they're genuine and authentic, and I'll say, okay, I'll let them know we're not moving them on. So that gives our team a sense of ownership over the environment and the people, and I think that's a really important ingredient in having great culture.
Definitely. I think the research and I think probably experience would also show that sometimes we get into a little bit of a trap of just doing an intuitive hire or an overly detailed and technical hire. So we might go through all the rigorous steps, but the feel isn't right, but we go with our head and we recruit the person even though it doesn't feel right. Or we just have a 5-minute coffee or a 1-hour coffee with someone and recruit on gut feel without going through the rigorous sort of technical checks as well. So I think that's probably why they say that when you combine, structured interview with structured reference checking with the right referees and psychometric testing and that coffee catch up, you're doing a pretty good job of finding out what you need to know. Michael, I just want to sort of switch to a little bit around retention. We've talked about attraction and recruitment, but you've got a really low rate of staff turnover at Help and Wealth. And I'm wondering what you put that down to in terms of are there conscious things that you've done or you do to really create the kind of environment where people want to stay?
We've got really good locks on the front doors. No, look, it's quite interesting listening to all of these elements, and you scared me at the start, but that's okay.
I have that effect on people.
So from our perspective, we hire for the people first. We've got the environment. I mean, for those people who've been into our office, it's a good place to work. Training is super important, and of course, listening is a pretty big element. But most of our acquisitions in terms of people have been through people that we've come across that we've approached to say, come and join our team, as opposed to, we need someone and having all these interviews. I think the risk with the latter is that you can actually have experienced people that tend to do a fair bit of job hopping nowadays. So we're trying to avoid that because, as everyone in this room would know, you can't just get a person and plug them in and they're off. You've got to train them. You've got to spend a lot of time with them to get them to the point where they're actually achieving the basic function. So getting the right person, I think, is first and foremost. That we can do all the other stuff, but getting that right person up front is super important. And because we do emphasise that, I think the balance kind of works itself out.
Definitely. So putting your emphasis on selecting someone who lives and breathes the same values and is highly aligned makes for great retention strategy as well.
The other thing is, as the team got bigger, and we've got nearly 40 people just in the advice side, and essentially it kind of self-perpetuates as well. It becomes a place that people want to come to. So, a lot of it kind of, as I said, self-perpetuates.
And a quick pulse check, who's got professional year? Michael, you've got how many?
We've got 2 on the go.
2,
and that's been fantastic. Once again, that was a decision that we made to bring people through. And because we do have a substantial team, we've got people that can put the training in and get them through those the milestones.
Excellent. And Glenn, you've got 3. Okay, busy times for you. Love to
fun
pick.
Times.
Yeah, fun times. What's been the experience with having 3 particularly at the same time? The good, the bad, and the ugly. Please spill.
There's a few in the room. So.
Okay, right.
So it's been a really it's a learning curve. Like PY is a broadly still a fairly new concept for us. So we've been really open about the fact that it's we're on a learning journey as well. But our approach has always been one of open communication, authenticity, and respect. The three PYs are at different stages, but it's really about talking to what success looks like for them, and actually having a few conversations with a number of advisors over the last 24 hours. One of the biggest challenges is around managing expectations. So, like everything we do, we have approached it with really open, honest communication, and spoken about what are the factors that need to be considered to move someone through their professional year. So that might be around the business. What do the business metrics need to look like in order to justify another advisor? We're very transparent around the business's financials, for better or worse. And it's really important for us that our team know how the business is tracking and performing. And it also gives the PY candidate the opportunity to contribute to those business metrics. If they understand what success looks like from a business perspective, that empowers them to contribute. The second would be around the technical aptitude, so making sure that they understand and can deliver the strategies that are relevant for our member base. And the third is around the soft skill. So the soft skill is one that, again, chatting to a couple of the students over the course of the last couple of days, is one that's not really trained at universities, and even if you're role-playing, it's very hard to actually develop those. So there is a lot of on the job learning. So what we've done now is looked at, how do we quantify that? Everyone within the business is very goal orientated, very driven. So they want to understand what does success look like. And when thinking about soft skills, that can often be quite a challenging thing to measure. So we've implemented a scale from 1 to 7, from 1 being poor and 7 being through to no possible improvement. And we're looking at things like EQ, so how do they relate to our members and how do they convey quite complex strategies potentially in a way that they can understand? What's their commitment and professionalism like? And how do they work with the rest of the team? If they're looking to move into an advice role, you're a team player. You've got a lot of people around you, from paraplanners to associates to those in fulfilment. So it's really important that they understand where they're at on that journey. And also, when we're having conversations around those soft skills, we've now defined what success looks like. We can also share with them how they're progressing to, from a 7 through to 6. I'm not sure anyone ever gets quite to 7.
It's the thing about scales, isn't it? There's that temptation not to, that's just really reserved for the cream of the crop, the once in a lifetime employee. That's really Glenn. Interesting, yeah. That's Glenn, the 7, not. Yeah, self-rated. And if anyone in the audience is looking for some support with your PY activities, the FAAA obviously has some resources available, and in particular you can email through to py@fAAA.com.au to get some tailored advice and just work up something that suits the query that you've got. Yeah, Glenn, it's interesting to get your take on that, because it's almost like with any sort of, if we're talking about soft skills, then with hard skills or technical skills, we would always look at the descriptive behaviours that are required to meet that particular competency. And we can always do the same, can't we, with behaviour-based descriptors of the kinds of client interpersonal communication skills that we're looking for. And we always advocate for leaders to try and go into a bit more descriptive detail when giving positive feedback. We over-prepare. If we've got to go into a meeting with someone and give them some constructive criticism, we write down every single thing that constitutes their behaviour and what it looks like in action that we'd like them to think about. But when you do that in a positive setting, providing praise to people, you can sort of go into great detail and say, because you did that and demonstrated this, the client then reacted in this way. I don't know if you picked up on that, but I think this is what happened. So I wanted to say well done on that. I think it reinforces the behavioural expectations that you're looking for, and it gives them more insight into you as their leader to think about what you stand for, and it helps them, what we say, think like an owner. Everyone wants employees who think like an owner, whether it's your receptionist, your CSO, your advisor, your chief technology officer, whoever it is. We want a team of people who think like an owner in everything that we do. Panel, we know that there's a growing demand for flexible work arrangements, and we also know that there's a growing demand for us as business owners and leaders to think about the pragmatic commercial growth strategy aspects of having a thriving practice. I'd love to get your thoughts, Tracy, on what flexible work arrangements do work and don't work for your team. You mentioned that work from home doesn't work.
No.
Is there anything that does work?
Yeah, I mean, during COVID, work from home worked because it had to. But on a general basis, I mean, it's just not going to work in a small team unless there's a reason, and we definitely take that into consideration. But as I said, having flexibility around starting times, finish times, swapping days to go to sports day, or a lot of those types of things really is what our employees really value that, and they know that they're perhaps getting a benefit they may not get somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Which lets them know that we value them, because we're trying to, as much as we want them to align with us, we're trying to align with them a little bit as well.
Absolutely. So they feel that you get it, you get the picture, that they have other things in life that are important to them.
Yes.
Michael, for you, flexible work arrangements, what works, what doesn't work?
Yeah, look, I think it's something we're trying to rein back in a little bit. It drifted. In a large firm, it's really hard to get that collaborative aspect live. And so as much as I'd like to have 100% of people back in there, it's not like that at the moment. But we're certainly trying to get more to come back. We're in an environment or a sector that requires a lot of paper handling, and we can't achieve that when we're working from home. And we know productivity, we've got the measures to see who's efficient and who isn't with technology. So, and we know that drops off when people aren't in the office. The other part to it, of course, is the mental health element. I think it's much healthier to be around people than stuck at home working on your own. From my perspective, it's something that I'm trying to rein back in. The other element, which is often not thought of, is the cyber risk. So if you've got nearly 40 people and 35 are working from home on various machines, and there's emailing documents, that can be pretty risky. So the idea of being in that secure environment keeps me happier.
Yeah, absolutely. Corey, I'd love to get your take on this too, and we've got a couple of questions from the audience that sort of tap into the same theme, which is sort of what happens if there is, once a person gets into a role, a little bit of a misalignment between what they thought it was going to look like, your culture, because we do get excited, don't we, when we're interviewing someone and we say, come and work for us, we're this, we're that, and for whatever reason, sometimes the expectation doesn't quite match the reality. So I'd love to ask you about, do you have a mechanism in place for when, there's certain mismatch of expectations? It could be around flexible work or just any performance/people aspect.
It's a good question. We fortunately don't have this issue, and I think that's because it's very well managed. Glenn was talking before about the importance of open, transparent communication and expectation setting. So one thing we say is disappointment is a result of poorly set expectations, and that goes for all walks of life, whether your friend tells you to go and watch a movie and says it's going to be the best movie you ever watched. You go in thinking this is going to be the best movie I've ever watched, and maybe if it's just great, you're disappointed. So, from our perspective, when we're going through the recruitment process, we've got a document which I share with you, Laura, in the lead up to today, called the Verse Culture Deck, and it's got about 188 slides in it. About 50 of those are dedicated to our culture. So they'll dive into our purpose, our values, the guiding principles and behaviours of our values, what culture means to us. It'll dive into all of our working philosophies. So they're all documented. So things like holidays, career progression, perks, trust, autonomy, flexible work, working from home, working from the office, promotions, remuneration, like all of these things we've given thought to, and we've documented the philosophy and then how we enact those philosophies. So, before you have a first interview, you get that Verse Culture Deck. It's incredibly insightful in terms of what is life like at Verse, and then as you go through the hiring process, you spend a fair bit of time with us. As I mentioned, those things are just being reinforced by the way myself and team are acting, thinking, talking, communicating with them. And when we do communicate with candidates through that process, we're totally transparent, which is one of our values, and we're open, we're vulnerable. I'm sure we will tell them things that at times they'll think, I can't believe he's telling me this. But what happens is they reciprocate too. The vulnerability and openness is met with vulnerability and openness, and the time you get into this long hiring process, you know each other pretty well. And the expectations are well set. So that's not so much of an issue. But when they do come in, just on the concept of flexible work, it's something that we have given a lot of thought, and it's unfolded in some ways organically over time as the business has grown, the people have grown, the dynamics of how we work has changed. But we have very few rules, I guess. The trust and autonomy is really high. When you do hire great people and you have a great culture, I know these sound like kind of cliches, but they're also true. When you've got great people and a great culture, you don't need to micromanage people. And great people crave, and if they don't have it, demand autonomy and freedom over their own lives. So we tell team all the time, we want you to integrate your work into your life, not the other way around. And it's another cliche, but that's something we really live. And that comes down to things like there's no start time. If you're driving into the office and you jump on the freeway and there's a crash and you're going to get there at 9:30, don't call us and tell us. You're not late. If you want to leave work early to go see your daughter get an award at school assembly, you don't need to tell us. We've hired you to do your job really well, and how you do it and where you do it is less important. We do have 3 days in, 2 days home. That's probably about as much structure as we have in terms of impeding people's autonomy, and that is more than anything the 3 days in. That is to create a greater sense of connectedness and relationships within the team, which I think is essential. I think it's really important too, as we're growing and adding new team all the time. If you're new and you're trying to get integrated to the people, the relationships, the culture, the role, and get autonomous and contributing quickly, that happens so much faster when you're with everyone. And the growth and development, often for younger people in the team, it's about all the small, tiny little 1%ers and little nuanced things that they see and hear throughout the day, and they can ask questions and jump into a meeting and say, hey, I just saw you did this, why did you do that? They don't have those opportunities when they're at home as much.
Definitely, and there's a theory called social penetration theory, where it's exactly what it sounds like. It's sort of like layers of an onion, I suppose, and in order to get to the nub of a relationship with someone and increase that sense of trust and vulnerability and openness, you do need to go through the more superficial layers, don't you? You need the water cooler discussions, the unproductive afternoons where you're talking rubbish, the ability to know what sports team, which dog, which beautiful greyhound do you own, the little things that don't appear to be task or development related discussions, to scratch through to the deeper layers, penetrate that sort of social relationship. So everything you're all saying is making complete sense. And I think we're having some questions come through as well, which is on this very topic around How do you define performance? We talk about a high performance culture and having expectations. I mean, do our panellists set KRAs and KPIs? Do we do performance appraisals regularly? Tracy, what does sort of high performance look like for your team?
Well, we're also very transparent with our team, and recently we employed someone who said what you said. Can't believe you're telling me that, We sit down regularly with our staff, probably quarterly, and go through, what our income's been, what our expenses have been, what our aim is for the next quarter. So we're very, very clear on that. High performance for everyone, I think, is just getting the job done and getting it done really well. And I can, because we are a small team, I can measure performance by how much is coming back to me. Yeah, so if the team's running well, I can be away on this conference for 3 days and not hear anything from the office, which I haven't so far. But, that's what it looks like for our team. We have 12 monthly formal appraisals and salary reviews. We also have 6 monthly, so we'll do one around Christmas where we actually just take a staff member out of the office. It's not always me, might be one of the other directors, just take them out of the office and have lunch and, just try and work out what's going on in their world. And I mean, we know that mostly, but sometimes it's not always reflected in the office. Get them on a one-on-one basis, find out if there's anything we can help them with, anything that can make their life easier, which then makes our life easier, and helps them to perform at that high level.
And I think, it's the questions that we're getting from the audience definitely do tap into that, in the sense that, how do we manage this? If we are providing flexibility, if we're saying no start times, so you come and go according to your discretion and judgment, what if people take the proverbial? What if people take advantage of what is designed to be a mature, trusting system? So I guess it comes back to having clear expectations around what defines performance. How do you do it, Glenn?
So not too dissimilar to Tracy. So we have a formal review or appraisal coming up to the end of financial year, and then another more casual one around Christmas. We're going through a process of reviewing all of our job descriptions. Some of our advisors have been with us for a couple of years, but going back to the original job description, is this what you're currently doing? Are there things on here that you don't do, or some things that you do that should be on here? And that's a collaborative effort across the advisors, across the associates, across the paraplanners, to make sure that there is alignment across the business. And also looking at we share business KPIs on a weekly basis. How many new members have we had? How many members have cancelled? Where are things in the pipeline from an advice delivery perspective? We're also going through a process of redefining our individual role KPIs and looking at, okay, well, what does success look like as an associate, as an advisor, etc. So in terms of how does that interplay with high performance? That's how we define it. And how does that play into the accountability piece and the trust piece from a flexibility perspective? But it's shared in the numbers. If we're on the same page and we're clear on what the numbers look like and what success looks like, then regardless of whether you're at home or in the office, not only are they thriving as an individual in their personal and professional journey, but also the business is thriving. And at the moment, we have 3 advisors. In 12 months, we'll have 6. Our member base will probably triple in the next 2 years. So it's working. And I'm incredibly proud of the colleagues that we get to work with. And this is always a collaborative effort. And that's been a testament to our retention in that, we're constantly asking, what more can we be doing? What are we doing well? What are we not doing so well? And also from an attraction perspective, like when we're recruiting, our team are our recruiters. They chat to their friends, they chat to others at Congress, and they seek out the next best talent to join the team.
So there's a fair bit of headhunting that goes on at all times.
Yeah, and we get a lot of people reach out. They say, hey, you're doing things a little bit differently. I'm based on the Gold Coast. Is that cool? Yeah, sure, no problem.
Yep.
As long as you come down to Sydney once a month, it's going to cost you $150 on Jetstar, and they're really comfortable with that.
Yep. So again, clear and transparent from the start, and with that loud brand voice that comes through in your everything to do with interacting with your firm, including your website. Michael, you're managing partner of a rapidly growing business. I imagine that your time is stretched thinly when it comes to getting personally involved in people and culture issues while trying to balance the strategic growth piece. What have sort of been your observations around how you do that from your particular position, balancing those two factors?
Yeah, so it's one you've got to make happen. So I make it my business to speak and listen, speak to people, you know, and listen to what they have to say, not just speak. It's got to be two-way, but you can't afford to let that slip. There is an expectation that when you walk into the office that people want to be heard, and you've got to make yourself available. I think the day that you stop that, you run the risk of damaging culture. We're certainly big on that, and we do weekly dashboards on a whole lot of metrics, not just the numbers. We do a quarterly business update, which provides insights into what the strategies are looking like and what, as a leadership team, we're trying to implement. We do have a social committee, which is good, kind of outsources that. It means that we, as a leadership team, we don't need to worry about that because the social committee drives that, and we kind of support that 2 or 3 times a year. That's the listening bit is super important, and I'll always roll my sleeves up and be part of that.
Yep, absolutely. Excellent. And Glenn, for yourself, probably in a similar position in terms of having a diverse team in different locations, in rapid growth mode, trying to be front and centre with the people and culture, but also being a bit stretched with time. How do you manage it?
So feedback's provided back to, so the team split into 2, myself and then Courtney, who's the head of advice, and feedback is given to us from the team in our informal catch-ups, which is on a fortnightly basis, and there's obviously also that opportunity in a more formal setting through the review process. We're a people business, and our virtual door is always open. If there's anything that anyone needs to talk about, we'll always create space for that.
Okay, excellent. And can I just get a quick show of hands? Who does share business metrics with their team? You all do, so that's interesting, isn't it? Have you run into any troubles with that in the past, or has it been taken the wrong way? Have people done the wrong thing with it, or have you just found that transparency is the best policy?
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
The transparency, and I think it's we've got one of our senior advisors in the room, and she constantly tells me how much she values the transparency that we have and the transparency that I lead the team with, and just empowers them to know not just what's happening but why it's happening. And if they don't, I think in the absence of transparency, a lot of negative things happen downstream. And one of those is people just make false assumptions about things. And false assumptions tend to be negative, and they'll share those negative assumptions with others in the team, teammates or colleagues, and before you know it, you've got divisions and politics and factions and these types of things that undermine your ability to lead the team and have the kind of culture that you do want.
You all agree?
Yeah, definitely.
And just by way of a show of hands, both for our panellists and in the room, in our audience, who has a documented employee value proposition? Has anyone got a formal document? Okay, so all 4 of our panellists and probably just a handful of our audience members. So that's quite telling as well, isn't it? And what I've been sort of hearing today, and you might be thinking the same thing, is that there has been quite an investment of time and energy into determining these things up front, isn't there? It's a case of saying, how do we do business within our practice and how can we formalise that? You know, we've all got those intuitive expectations around how we want to look, how we want to sound in the marketplace, how we want people to regard us, interact with us, what it means to be a high performer with our practice. But let's document it and formalise it. And I think that's a significant investment of time, particularly when you're talking about the 150 slide culture deck and things of that nature. But it sounds like it's something that pays off because it then guides the way that you can manage to those expectations, set the expectations up front. And I think a good employee value proposition, correct me if I'm wrong, is something that changes over time. Has yours changed?
I was going to say, ours is constantly evolving and it's constantly on my to-do list because someone in the team will go, oh, how have we thought about this? Or we thought about that. Was that something we should be considering? So for us, it feels like very much a working document.
Yeah, and do you have any tips for us in terms of how you go about that process of preparing it? You know, what does it look like? Who sits down? Who does it? And you know, walk us through the practical specifics of it. Tracy?
Yeah, so ours is sort of a values of our business.
Values driven.
And it sort of morphs then into a HR manual, so a bit of the same. So we actually got a HR consultant to come in and go through, you know, what we thought. We also got her to meet with each of the staff members to make sure that we're all on the same page, and from there we've developed a manual which is only maybe 6 months old, so yeah, but it will be reviewed.
Excellent. So you've got sort of the strategy and the policy and then the operational framework.
Yeah, so it's got 2 parts to it.
Yeah, so it sort of taps into that prevention and early intervention, doesn't it? You've got the best practice, gold standard, this is what we want it to look like, this is what it looks like in action, and at the earliest, if we detect some misalignment there, then, you know, we can address that early on and everyone's on the same page.
That's right.
Similar experiences?
Yep.
Yeah, happy for me to go there, Michael?
Go.
Yeah, thanks, mate. In terms of like the evolution of, we don't call it an employee value proposition. We don't even use the word employee or employer or boss or staff.
Yep.
We're a team full of teammates. Teammates, the highest title you can have in our business. And one thing we do in the lead up to our annual 3-day retreat, we call it Next Verse, is we send out a digital survey and ask a bunch of questions. And some of those are around like, how can we make this a better place for you to work? You know, if you could change one thing about us tomorrow, what would you change? Or if we could improve your working experience, what would that look like? And a lot of what comes out of those things can be perks, given I think the foundations of the culture and the philosophies are really solid and we're highly aligned. But, you know, as an example, we had our retreat a few months ago and we launched a community day where the whole team gets together once a year. We launched birthday leave, which was something that a lot of people were asking for. There was a common thread of moving to a 4-day work week, which we're not ready for, but we might be further down the track. So we're trying to create this natural, organic kind of push and pull of what team want and what's important to them, but also, you know, making decisions that we think are in the best interest of everyone and communicating what we're doing, what we're not doing, and why we're doing it or not doing it.
Excellent. Michael, what does it look like for you at Help and the employee value proposition or whatever you call it?
It's all of the above. Obviously, that is overlaid with the corporate governance aspect. It's all well and good to come up with all these wonderful ideas, but we always make sure that framework sits within the regulatory or legislative environment, first and foremost. But yeah, it's very much a team, as Corey mentioned, and driven by the team. So we actually do formal feedback sessions twice a year to make sure we're getting the right feedback. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Two-way feedback, yeah. Yep, absolutely. And then you're dealing with reality at least, even when the feedback is confronting for any party, at least it's out there in the open and you deal with it sensitively.
Yeah, I've actually, I've got my own teammate review coming up on Friday morning.
Oh, good luck.
This week. So everyone gets to give me transparent feedback in the lead up, and then in an open forum environment, I'll get them to clarify some of those things, and I have my own blind spots. It's a chance for me to identify, like, how can I be a better leader for you? How can I do my role at a higher level and help us continue to get better? And I think that's one of the challenges of leadership is it can be a bit lonely, as people say, and you don't necessarily get the feedback. But if you can create an environment where people can openly give it to you, then you can use it to your own advantage.
Yeah, and I think it's obviously always intimidating giving feedback to someone who's accountable for your performance and your employee, your work conditions, for want of a better word. But I think it's a bit like a continuum, is that we develop an understanding of someone through regular interaction with them. And if people are working with you and feel that when they give you feedback, it's used constructively and it's interpreted in the right spirit and you're non-defensive about it and there are no negative implications for them, that's what encourages more of it. So I wouldn't mind betting that early on in the piece, if a person's giving you that feedback for the first time, it may be a little bit punctuated with pleasantries and a little bit more tentative, but the more they get to know you on that continuum and where you sit, the more open they can be. And that's culture, isn't it? That's the psychosocial climate. Tracy, what did things look like for you when you started your own business in 2000? Yes, tough time. For people who are sitting here today thinking, this all sounds fabulous for a practice of a particular size, but I'm a solo operator. I've got one or two employees supporting me. How did things look for you in those early days in terms of these formal employee value propositions and policies, procedures?
Well, it was just me. And then you sort of start with a part-time CSO, then you go to a full-time CSO, and it just sort of evolved over time. And it's got to the point now where we've got 8 of us working together, which is still a small team. But we really felt it was time to ensure that, and because I don't do all the hiring anymore either. So I went on a trip overseas this year for 5 weeks with my parents. And when I got back, we had a new employee. Okay. So it's just evolved over time, but that's why we went down the path of getting someone in formally to help us construct our value proposition and HR manual to make sure that, it did absolutely align with what we were trying to achieve.
As sort of, if you think back to those psychosocial climate factors, you've got some pretty heavy concrete ones around bullying and harassment, and workplace conflict and things like that, where it's necessary to have clear policy and procedure on those items. And then you've got the more nuanced and subtle things where you put in place strategy or ideas to foster team building or team dynamics, things that sort of create a constructive culture. And we know that a certain level of stress is good for our people, for ourselves in our work. We don't want to be too bored. We want to be stressed in the sense of being challenged. But the difference between being stressed and distressed is if we're distressed, it's usually that we feel the challenge is insurmountable and or we don't have any support from leadership or colleagues. We're alone, we're isolated. That's usually the difference between a stressed workplace culture and a distressed one. Any tips in that regard in terms of people looking for inspiration to put in place team building ideas that really go beyond being tokenistic and everyone sort of groans and thinks, oh, not another one of those things, or it's out of kilter with, we're all going paintballing, or we're all going to the movies, we're all going out for dinner, but really we hate each other's guts, we want to have that alignment between meaningful enjoyable team building activities?
Yeah, I mean, we do the charity day once a year where we pick a charity and we go and either assist them or, we raise money for a charity. I've done things in my team because, yes, we're all mums except for one who's a male. And we ran a first aid course where we got all the families come over to our house, and we got paid someone to come in and do first aid training for working on children and babies, and had just a nice lunch, and it's about just relaxing together, but also offering them something that that they'll really value.
Fabulous, great idea. Others?
For us, creating connection within the team, being virtual, I suppose, has a number of layers. So connection for us is a very aligned purpose and mission. It's also overlaid by making sure that the strategy that we're building collaboratively and delivering on that strategy together. And connection is also defined by creating a safe space for diversity of thought and also creating a safe space for feedback. And when we are in the same room, and again, it happens every month, so it rolls around very quickly. So every 4 weeks rather, we've done everything from pole dancing to candle making to wine tasting to cooking classes.
Hopefully not all at the same time.
Not all at the same time.
Could be physical harm and the psychosocial risk, yeah.
But you build very strong connections with people by doing stuff that's just a bit random and fun.
Absolutely.
Would pole dancing, Michael, get through your governance protocol?
Sorry, and avoid paintball as well.
Too much of a WHS risk, yeah, absolutely.
Well, one thing we do here, Lauren, which is really simple, is every second Friday, it used to be every week, we have a gratitude session. So we've got about 20 in the team. Of those 27 teammates are in the Philippines. And we get together on Zoom and everyone shares one thing they're grateful for. And I would say probably 30 to 40% of the gratitude is for a teammate. Ellie did this for me this week, really living our team first, team last value. I really love working with you, Ali. Thanks for bringing great energy. I'm grateful for you. And they'll say 1, 2, 3, and we'll all clap and move on to the next person. And the gratitude might be about a family member. It might be for their health. They might have lost someone. And what happens as we cycle these every fortnight is you get to learn something new about everyone every fortnight. And you do see a lot of vulnerability in these over time. I've cried in a few of these over time when maybe things are happening in my life with family or whatever, and that vulnerability creates connection, and it brings people closer together. So, there's something you could do as a team to create more connection. Really simple exercise, just have a gratitude session. If you're all in the office, do it together, get in a circle, share one thing you're grateful for. It could be the weather, it could have been the Congress, it could be a friend of yours, it could be a great dinner you had. Let people know. Count to 3, clap together, move on, and we've done 250 of these probably now, and they never get old.
It's fabulous. Yeah, I think it's basically an invitation to say, talk to me. What are your thoughts, feelings? I'm interested in you. You're a person. I worked with a great manager who would always say to me at the end of a performance or task-related chat, anyway, Loz, enough about that. How's everything else with you? And it was just permission to just be open. Michael, final thoughts on the team connectedness strategies? Anything to add?
Look, we do team events. We've tried most of those except for the pole dancing.
Should get on it, mate.
Yeah, but in terms of the social connection, every Friday at 4 o'clock, the rules are if you want, we've got a bar and kitchen area. We put drinks and food on, and people are welcome to move into there, which majority do, and then that's where we have those open conversations. But it's not compulsory. It's 4 o'clock Friday.
Yep.
Not compulsory. If you've got stuff to do, you can continue to do it. But yeah, that's where a lot of that happens. But I think creating the format to allow that engagement is all we can do. It's up to them.
Absolutely. wonderful to get your take on everything. I'll hand back to Julie in a moment. I think, just listening to the panellists, I think, what I've heard is that despite the nuances in the differences and the sizes of your practices and the way specifically that you go about things, there's common threads around the importance of creating proactive, clear strategies that set the tone, knowing your expectations, communicating those with great enthusiasm and without apology, staying connected with people, inviting feedback. It's all around those psychosocial climate factors. So I'd love for you to join me in thanking our wonderful panellists for their openness and their insights today.